bobbing when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members. After 45 years, Hull Kingston Rovers are once again Challenge Cup winners. Breathe it in because it's been a long time coming, Robins. But here we are. The heart is no longer broken and the Robins are dining again at the top table. Wow. I tell you what, guys, we've got a stellar lineup on the Robin Pod this evening because there's people who were there back in 1980. There's people who have been there much before us. It's you know, I had the privilege, Graham, of watching the game back today. It's the first time I've watched the game back today, and even now, yeah, they want a dry eye when they did lift the trophy. I tell you what, they want a dry eye when I watched the replay. They want a dry eye when I was in 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗃 Square. You know what? It still gets you now. And I know this is as we recall, this is Wednesday, but Graham, well, it was a momentous occasion, and there'll be lots of people watching and listening to this who will be probably in a state of flux. We don't quite know what to do. We're in that in between stage.
Yeah, John, I like everybody, just gone through the ringer in the last 3 or 4 days. Emotions. It's been highs, ultimate highs, and then now there's a bit of a reality check kicking in, thinking we've done it. Oh, but we've got another game on Friday night to think about now. Let's get back into business mode. But we really want to enjoy what we've just done over the weekend. Yeah, I wish that guy who's chopping those really big onions had disappeared, because I think yeah, there's a lot of tears on Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, and just thinking back to that, I managed to watch it back on Sunday, John, the game, and noticed quite a lot within the playback that I didn't pick up on during the live game when we were there, and it's almost a different game on TV to being there, which is really daft thing to say, I know, but there was so much stuff that I didn't notice went on from us in terms of hard graft to make it, you know, to make it all the way through to earn us the right to do what we did later on. So yeah, I'm sure people have watched it back 100 times probably, and especially the last 5 minutes or so. But if you haven't, just watch it with an eye on our effort areas and that defence that we pride ourselves on. Because I think on the day I didn't recognise that as much. I was probably paying too much attention to the lack of attack qualities that we had. But watching it back, I thought we were outstanding defensively.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Graham, we'll pick up on the nuances and the game and how it unfolded and the good stuff. There was some bad stuff. It wasn't a perfect performance. We'll pick up on that later. But Scott, I mean, you're much better than me with your words. I mean, how do you sum up that experience? Because it was a long time coming. We've been waiting. There's a lot of people who were there in 1980 who were managed and privileged enough to be at Wembley again to see another Challenge Cup victory. How do you sum that up? Like I said, you're so much better with words than I am.
Well, for 77, 78 minutes, we were losers again, weren't we? And it's just that last 2 minutes that has got us over the line. But like Graham just said, it's probably all those effort areas that has allowed us to go on and have the right to have that one chance. And I think I put on social media, you know, we were, when you, Graham's right, when you're watching the game live, you think that you're never going to score and you're not doing the right things and everything's going against you. But when you watch it back and you see the effort of the lads, especially defensively, that effort in defence gave us the right to have that final 2 minutes where we always knew if we had one chance, we needed one chance in their 20. And if we could take that one chance, it'd be enough. And luckily it came. But that don't come without the 77 minutes of hard work prior to that. And we worked great. I know we're going to come into probably the game generally, but we worked great with ball in hand. But for 77 minutes, we'd lost again. And I think even when we won, and we found out that we won, and the delay and the video ref and the delay and giving the try, even when the try was given, I still didn't quite believe that it had been given as a try. It still felt, I don't know why, I still felt a little bit deflated that we could win the cup here with Mikey Lewis's kick, but I still felt as though we'd lost the game somehow until the final hooter went. It was just a roller coaster of emotions. Everybody was all over the place, weren't they? Because we just wanted it so bad. And as I said, we think we'd lost it again and we'd have to go around again next year to try again. And then all of a sudden, in the final 2 minutes, it just happens for you. It's just, the euphoria and the feeling of celebrationary actions were just out of this world. I mean, we were sat on the touchline. We was on in the level 2 on the touchline, and I was looking over to the Rovers fans behind the posts. And when the try was given, we'll talk about limbs. When they talk about limbs at football, it just went absolutely mental. We were going mental, but to see the Rovers fans go like they did, which was bonkers. It was brilliant to observe. It really was.
James, did you ever stop believing?
Honestly, I did. Yeah.
I
did.
Hey, I tell you what, you're not the only one, because there was a point, I think, we're probably about the we'll come on to the game, but probably about the 72nd minute, I thought, we're not. Warrington are getting stronger here.
Yeah.
And I looked to Finlay, I said, my lad, and I said, we're on the rack here. You know, it's like that. Then boxing matches, wasn't it? You know, where you see the old boxer, he's reeling, and you can't see another punch coming.
I did. Yeah, it was my 6th cup final at Wembley Rovers, and I think probably about 10 minutes from the end, I thought it's not going to happen again. You know, we're going to go home. I'm going to be despondent. You know, I'm going to sort of delete all my social media. It's just going to be absolutely horrendous. And you know, the stepson said to me, after, you know, when they forced those three consecutive dropouts, he said Rovers are out. Said they're gone. He said, and I think all it would have taken would have been a drop goal from Sneed, and that would have been it. You know, it wouldn't have made any difference in terms of the scoreboard. You know, in terms of the 5 points that still could score trying a goal, but I think Rovers just out on the feet. And there's another incident. I think when the Rovers put a kick through on the last tackle, 2 Rovers man chasing the ball, it hits the post and bounces into Duffy's hands. You know, thinking it's not going to be our day, but it just proves it's an 80-minute game. I haven't watched it back yet, so I'm just want to, you know, probably watch back over the weekend. But like I say, it's what you do in the final 2 minutes in such a close game that matters. And we hung in there. The amount of ball Warrington had, the amount of pressure they put us under, we hung in there. We managed to hang in there and pull it off. And it's just like, when that hooter went, well, I think when he sent it up as a try, I thought, I just couldn't believe it. I thought I could see he'd grounded it, but it's just the way the ball had come out so quickly. I thought Hicko had knocked it on us. There's been a knock on or something. But when he sent it up as a try, I thought he's going to give this. And then the more you watched it, it's going to give it. And then, like I say, when cie came up, it's just unbelievable. And then just thinking, golden point there. And then Mikey did it. Yeah, it's just, that final hooter is just, I think, for me, just like 40 years, 45 years of just emotion all pent up and just exploded in that moment. And, it was special.
I think that's the point, isn't it, Graham? It ain't just about necessarily the victory in terms of the Challenge Cup. It's about what's gone before. It's about, you know, even now, I think Rovers are still being, a lot of opposition supporters are trying to put us back in our box. Like, they don't like this new team who's coming up. You know, it's not a new team. We were one of the most successful teams that ever played rugby league in the 80s. Like, I think people forget that actually this was Hull Kingston Rovers at one time, over a long period of time, was one of the greatest rugby league teams that was playing at the time. And I think that's gone, you know, people focus on oh, you haven't won a trophy for so long. You haven't done this. Actually, at the time, we had some of the best rugby league players in the world at our club. We was winning trophies regularly. Now, yeah, that was a long time ago, but I think people forget that. But I think, like James said, Graham, there was a lot of pent-up frustration that was released at the hooter, the full-time whistle, because it was just, you know what, it was celebratory, but it was relief as well. It was like a gasket going off. It was just that all that stuff we've been feeling and just going like that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit stronger than John our end. I can tell you that for a starter. Yeah, that like James has said there. 80s, you know, 85, 86 was when the sort of heydays of the trophies every sort of year. So a lot of new fans will have come to rugby, not just to Rovers, but to rugby in that 40 years since we were successful in that period. So they won't necessarily know about that period. And, you know, for us who have been around the block a few times and been there through those times and had to wait this long for success, even though we're there in 81, 86, 2015, etc. You know, there's been multiple visits, but never a success. And it's just gradually built up and built up and built up. And then, of course, in the last, you know, few years, the social media's ramped up about how many days and years it's been since we've won a trophy, and that brings added pressure to it. So yeah, that whole release at full time was just, you know, it meant different things to different people, and I get that. And, you know, we've had a lot of new fans to the club who have, you know, maybe weren't even there in 2015 when we went to, you know, and got battered by Leeds, but were maybe there in 2023 against Leigh, for example. You know, so they haven't seen all and felt all that over such a long period of time. But, you know, I saw many grown people there bawling their eyes out on Saturday afternoon, quite rightly as well. But that day, that victory will just mean so much to so many people in many different ways. It might be relief. You know, for the new fans, it might be that might be the thing that turns them absolutely head over heels in love with Hull KR now, if they weren't already. And it might, you know, it might be a family moment where you're with your son, daughter, grandparents, mum, dad, whatever it might be. You know, I was there with my brother and my pals who I've stood on the terraces with for the last 40 years. And we were there together, you know, as we have been every week for donkey's years, through the thick and the thin, through Wembley defeats. So for that, you know, that moment for us was just super special. But again, everybody's got their own story to tell about what it will mean to them, from a personal point of view, from a family member's point of view, for people that were there, for people unfortunately who couldn't be there. You know, there's so many stories behind it, and I've just loved looking at all the social media, the celebratory stuff, and seeing just unbridled joy that people have experienced. And you can only get that, I think, through sport and investing in sport emotionally, and just to see all those, you know, none of that's rehearsed, none of it's scripted, it's all just pure raw emotion that comes from the players. And you see the bits where Peter's, you know, at the final, that is just pure emotion as well. And I've loved seeing that over the last 4 or 5 days as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, of all the people, Scott, I mean, we're going to come on to like the actual game and speed and all stuff like that. I tell you what, the fastest person on that pitch was Willie Peters. When he ran from the touchline, he ran right to the post, or just before the post, and made sure that he celebrated right in front of the Rover supporters. I've never seen someone run so quick. Now I've watched the game back, obviously. They kept showing the box he was in. Danny Ward was left on his own. Willie Peters was ready to go, and you know what a moment, because Willie Peters, he's one person along with many who was transformed, not just the outlook of the club, the mentality of the club, the psyche, the want to be better. It is transformational. You know, I think I talked last week about, in the build-up to this cup final, that effort's not enough now. Pride's not enough. It's about the next level about winnings, and we saw that, didn't we? You know, we put the effort in. Yeah, of course we had pride, but what they did is seal the deal. And I think 𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗧, he's stealing us. His resolution, his just ability to get the players going along with him. I mean, 𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗧 is, like I said, one person who along with many, who's transformed the club, but 𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗧 has been so integral to that.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. He's a born winner, isn't he? You know, even as a player himself, he did all the 1% really, really well. You know, and he demands that of his players as well. He demands that of, whether you're in his first 17 or whether you're part of the squad, he makes sure that every single player is ready to go. If he needs you to go for him, he's got you ready. And he's just a born winner. But it's his inspiration around the club as well. It's not just his ability and guile as a coach. I think it's Willie as a person as well. I think his management of each individual player, knowing perhaps when a player needs an arm around the shoulder, or perhaps when a player maybe needs to be told that they're not doing this, that, and the other. And he's not scared to pull players as well if they make an error on the field. Look at 𝗪𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 when he tried the offload in the first half, he was pulled straight away. He was off. Get off. I'm not having that. You know, he demands such high standards from every single one of his players. And his players give him that as well. You know, but this runs right through the club. Woody's got that running from him as a head coach through to all his coaching staff, down through his players, down through all the different levels of the club that play the sport for the club, down to all the staff that make it happen on a daily basis. Everybody pulls in the same direction. And he always includes the fans in that as well. You know, without the fans, we're nothing. He said that a million times. We're one big team. We're one big club. And just because we don't pull the shirt on and play for the club, the fans have a massive responsibility to help get us over the line. We did that on Saturday. We do that every time we turn up at Craven Park and all the away games we go to. You can only be successful if you're prepared to do the extra yards, the extra 1%ers, the little things that nobody else does. And as you've said, effort and guile aren't always enough. Sometimes you've got to have that drive and determination. Like Saturday was an example. Sometimes you're not at your best. Certainly we work with the ball. Sometimes you're not at your best, but sometimes it's still good enough to win you a game, just down to the absolute passion of what your coach and what the coaching staff has drilled into the players. That never say die attitude, that will to win every single time you turn up and pull the badge on, you pull the shirt on. And we see that week in, week out with Rovers now. And all that is down to Willie. And I'm sure he would say all the team around him as well.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, James, there's 𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗧, you know, as good as he is with the team, there's a few things that he won't be happy with. I'll tell you what, that opening 10 minutes, there's a few interesting things, weren't they? You saw the Hargreaves contact with Vaughan, which could, on another day, you know, it was really interesting because I thought Liam Moore had a great game in terms of refereeing the game because he refereed it as a final and not a Super League game. But that opening 10 minutes, we saw the Warren Hargreaves contact with Vaughan, the Burgess tackle on Fulis, which could have, you know, and then we saw the disallowed try. It wasn't the perfect opening 10 minutes, was it, in terms of potentially things that could have gone against us. But it, like Scott said about the resilience and how we just sort of went on from that. But yeah, that opening 10 minutes for me, James, now I've watched it back, I'm a little bit, you know, if I was a TV spectator or if it was a Super League game, you could have been a little bit more worried.
Yeah, like I say, it wasn't the best. And I think when you look back at the games this season where we've basically taken control of games in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes or so and just basically strangled the opposition. But, you know, for whatever, whether it was the occasion, whether it was the conditions, we just couldn't. So, you know, we just didn't start as sure they wanted to start. I think we knew Warrington were going to come at us. I think, you know, they've clearly put all their eggs into the Challenge Cup basket. You know, getting Williams back, etc., and Vaughan and sort of 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏. And yeah, it just seemed to be as there's going to be one of those days when no matter what you did, it just wasn't going to be work out for you. But like I said, use that word resilience. I think that's what this squad has got. I think you look over the 80 minutes, we, like I said, we weren't at our best, but we're still good enough to beat a team who were playing probably as best as they've played all season. And I think we were saying beforehand on the way down that if Rovers bring their A game, they win. Whatever happens, whatever Warrington do, Rovers bring their A game, Rovers win. If Rovers are slightly off and they play the B or C game and Warrington bring their A game, then we might have problems. But I think it's clear from that opening 10, 15 minutes that Warrington certainly have brought their A game, and we needed to up the tempo. But as you said, whatever reason, it just wasn't clicking. But it's all immaterial now. It's what happened in that last 2 minutes that matters.
Exactly. But I'll tell you what, Graham, there was a lot of, if you look at the Super League games that have gone before, in that first half, there was a lot of uncharacteristic errors, things that we've never done. The weather played a big factor in that, maybe. I don't know. It was wet. We saw balls popping out of people's arms that we've never seen before, and we saw players doing things that we haven't seen all season. But Rovers, as good as Warrington was, Rovers did help them in terms of some of the mistakes that they came up with.
Yeah, I think you said the word there, uncharacteristic, and we've not seen that. And I think from the weather perspective, when was the last time we played in rain? It was months ago. So I'm not saying it was the reason that things happened, but the things that James alluded to there around the weather conditions, the occasion itself, the want to win internally, the necessity to win, the pressure of being favourites, all of that can affect the clarity of thinking that on an ordinary Super League day, a lot of those distractions and noises aren't around you. You've had all the week up to build up to it. It's a different week as well with the media hype and all the interviews that go on that don't happen during the Super League round week. So, things were different. I'm sure the preparation was tried to be kept as much the same as possible, but then you had the travel, so all things combined, it was a different week, albeit they tried to keep it the same week. And yeah, on the field, we sort of alluded to the fact that the occasion was getting to them a little bit, and they were making those uncharacteristic errors that we don't see week in, week out. So yes, it was the possibility of recognising that actually we are under the pump here, that we are on the back foot, and that's not been our normal course of action over the course of the last 7 or 8 weeks. We've been the dominant force here, and we've basically had things our own way in the first 20-25 minutes. That wasn't happening, and we sort of put it down to a fact of have we got that plan A and then that's it? We haven't got the ability to shift our game in any way, and do we just stay on the plan no matter what, or have we got that ability to recognise and change things up when appropriate? So yeah, I think all that considered, it was unusual to see it, and I think that's what Pat started to put those little seeds of doubt in people's minds as spectators about the longer that sort of thing went on, and it just felt like we've said it before on today's podcast that it wasn't going to be our day, and just those little things of us not acting like we normally do, the weather conditions playing a part, the fact that Warrington were on their A game, and yeah, it just didn't look at the start, that first 15-20 minutes, like it was going our way until we got that penalty and sort of got our noses in front with Mikey's 2 points.
It's really funny, isn't it, Scott? Because at the time, like after the walking out of Wembley, one of the first things I said about the Robins is that as a player group and as a fan base, sometimes we get too emotionally involved, like almost to the point where the players, when we do the send off on Thursday and we go to the the care home, which is an amazing thing that they do. It's an amazing. We should do it, but there's so much emotion involved that sometimes that can weigh heavy on the players. But the flip side of emotion is that's what gets you through the difficult parts of the game. At the end, that's what the desire, the want, the players want to do it for themselves, want to do it for the supporters. And that's what maybe then gets them over the line with 2 minutes to go with that try, because they never stop believing and they keep emotions so difficult to manage sometimes, Scott, and getting the balance between being cold and being clinical and being professional, but then also using emotion and motivation it's a real hard balance sometimes.
It is. And I think no matter how hard you try to say you're going to play a cup final just like you're going to play a league game, you treat it as a league game. It isn't the same. It isn't. No matter how hard you try in regards, you're trying to keep your preparation the same and keeping the, your heavy training day and then the captain's run, even that taking place at the stadium. And as you mentioned, all the stop-offs and the wave-off goodbye, it's not the same. You try and keep it as the same as best as you can. And Willie can say we're going to try and keep it, low key. It's not the same, is it? You're going in down to Wembley. You're going to a cup final. Your coach is heading up. You're going on a train for a start. You're travelling down by train. All the media speculation. Will he want the McIlroy situation? Will he want to play? All the Warrington situation. Will they want to play? It's totally different to a league game. Even if you try and treat it as a league game as best as you can, the emotions and what do you do right? What's the best thing to do? Team off on Thursday. Just speaking to a few people down there, and they were saying that Rovers changed a few things this year that was in their control. Things that are out of your control, you can't do anything about. But for example, like Willie turned around and he did say that last time against Lee, they was on a coach down to London for 7 hours, far too long to be sitting on a coach. So they changed it to the train. They can change that. And then they stayed in the hotel, the Hilton at Wembley this time, which is where, ironically, where Lee stayed 2 years ago. They stayed in the Hilton Hotel, did Lee? And that's where Rovers stayed this year. Last time, Rovers stayed out in the countryside somewhere. And Willie said it was the most fantastic hotel he's ever stayed in, 5-star luxury. But what was a 50-minute coach ride to Wembley, or what should have been a 50-minute coach ride to Wembley, turned out to be over 2 hours due to traffic before you're playing in a cup final. So Rovers changed little things that they could be in control of. Some things you can't be in control of, but the things that they could control, they did. But it's still not the same, is it, as a league game on a Friday night or a Saturday night in the Super League. As much as you try and keep it like it, it's not. There's so many overriding emotions that change that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, Scott, is like you said about the changes. It's a well-coined phrase now. You've got to lose one to win one, and part of that is probably learning from your experience previously. And I think that's what is so good about the Robins at the moment, is that they do learn and do something about it. They don't stand still. And like you said, changing hotels, preparations, it's experience. Yeah, I mean, ideally, we just want them to win. But you do need them to learn. James, I'll tell you what, that opening first half, it was absolutely toe-to-toe a battle on it. It was so intense. It was, and great, I think we cannot do the Robin Pod without giving great credit to Warrington, because they played the game of their life, the best game of the season. They did absolutely their effort levels, their energy. I mean, their line speed was unbelievable how quick, and it didn't relent. But particularly in that first half, two teams just going toe to toe in a rugby league cup final, Challenge Cup final. It was, sometimes people look at rugby league games, and if it's not 34-36, think it's been a bad game. Well, actually, the beauty of rugby league is two teams going toe to toe and waiting for the error, waiting for a mistake. That is the beauty of rugby league for me, because it's like a chess game.
Yeah,
when you're at that top level, and there's no doubt that both teams in that first half were absolutely going hell for leather at each other and producing a great spectacle.
It was, and I think like I say, I think people expect lots of points and tries and etc. But sometimes those arm wrestle games are just so intense, and you just get so engrossed in them. I think for me that was probably as intense as that challenge, that playoff semi-final against Warrington. at the end of last season, and it was just there's just no quarter being given or asked by either team. And I think, like I say, you've got to give credit to Warrington. They certainly brought their A game, and their tackling was just absolutely phenomenal. And you know, Rovers were playing as well as Warrington were letting them, and the fact that we're on them so quickly and just 3-4 men into every tackle, then getting back into line to defend, and we just struggle to get over on 20, 25, and it's just, you know, having to get into the fifth tackle, and we're probably about 30 yards from a line and having to boot the ball down the field, and then because, you know, we haven't to put any kick pressure on you know, you're allowing Duffy then to run, you know, 40, 50 yards to start it all over again. And I was starting to get worried about the amount of defending that Rovers were having to do, and whether, you know, how much that was going to take out of them, you know, with the weather, etc., and again, just the whole emotion around the occasion. But so, you know, just that resilience that we spoke about earlier, it just really came through. And yeah, to be fair, did Warrington look like they were going to score? No, I don't think they did. And I think, again, that is very much testament to Rovers' defence. You know, we're giving credit to Warrington, but we've got to give credit to Rovers' defence as well. I cannot think of a time when they missed a tackle. You know, we pride ourselves on our attacking price and our defensive price. Defence was solid. You know, Warrington weren't getting through. But it was that attack that was, I think, we were getting all a bit worried about when we've come to really expect Rovers to blow teams away in that first 15, 20 minutes. I think, haven't we scored the most tries in the first 10 minutes of a game, you know, in Super League? And, you know, you got to 20, 25 minutes, it was 0-0. Well, Mikey's goal 2-0. And that just highlighted how, you know, how intense that whole game was and how, you know, both teams just going at it. You're mute.
Graham, it was going to be a moment of magic, or it was going to be an error that came up with the first try of the game. Of course, we saw Mikey Lewis put the 2 points over, but we saw the Burgess error from, I mean, a weldy kick from Sneyd. It looked like it's funny when them kicks go up, they look so slow. But I imagine as a player, when they're coming down at you like a bomb, aren't they? And not only are they coming down, like they're swirling. Burgess, for me, did well to get under it, but he did come up with the error. And then, of course, then that led to the first try of the game.
Yeah, I think Matt Newson called it. He called it like a carry a bag in the wind type of kick.
Great line, isn't it? A carry.
Yeah, it's a great line. That I think it's probably a fair analogy when you're stood looking up at it and you're chasing it all over the place with your eyes, trying to work out where to position yourself. But yeah, it came up with the error. But again, we've then got to reset after that. It's happened, and we've got to put that to bed really quickly. There was a good element of fortune in there, trying the fact that the kick came off of Litton's boot, bounced up and popped into the winger's hand there, and you could argue that if it hadn't have happened and it had gone through, you know, Mikey, I think, was coming round on the sweep, he'd have either ushered it behind for a dropout.
Well, that's what I was thinking. When you watch it, actually, they had it covered. If the kick went where it was going to go, there was absolutely, they'd have diffused it and there'd have been no problem whatsoever. But that deflection from Litton, which is not through his fault because he's there to, you know, to do that. I mean, you could question whether he needs to do that, but he was doing everything. But the bounce of this is sport, and the bounce of the ball can dictate so many things.
Yeah, the bounce of the ball. I mean, it bounced. If you look, Ty must have got a call from his winger because he sort of goes for it with his hands, but then withdraws them quite quickly. So he must have, you know, the winger must have worked that out pretty sharpish that it was coming his way. But yeah, another bounce from Litton's boot another day. It could have gone forward, and you know, Burgess could have run through, picked it up, and scooted up. You'll never ever know now that. But if it had gone through the line, I do think that we'd have had enough to diffuse it or see it dead, and then just reset with a dropout and play from there. So it didn't. It could have been I think it was a bit of a body blow just before half time, and then, you know, Sneyd, as he does, nails the kick from the touchline to take us in 6-2 down at half time. And it was again, it was just another thing where you're thinking, oh blimey, is that we've gone in at half time, we're having to go in on the back of that negative point against us there. How is that going to affect us? And I think with the Rovers we've seen this year in 24 building through to 25, that resilience of it didn't affect anything. It didn't affect the game plan or the mentality in any way. If anything, it probably just drove a more steely resolve into us. And I think that, you know, that game of chess that was the first half, it was sort of pretty much on us even. You know, it was literally people cancelling each other out, and there wasn't that much to choose between them other than a ricochet that popped into the winger's hands and dotted down for a 6-2 half time.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, what were you thinking at half time? Because, I mean, over the course of the Super League season so far, at half time, there's been lots of occasions where we've been comfortably in front. This was a bit of a different feeling.
I actually thought that, as Graham just said, it was tit for tat, wasn't it, really? There wasn't anything between the teams, apart from the ricochet. And I might even add, even after it came off Litton's boot, he still skidded up perfectly off the turf right into Theodis' arms. There was like 2 or 3 little moments in that kick that benefited Warrington. And if you look back and watch it, they did get the bounce of the ball quite a lot all afternoon on Saturday, in most little things. I was panicking in a way. I was disappointed that we hadn't obviously created a lot in attack. And I was screaming out in the first half because they kept pinning us back. And then we did eventually get a bit of field possession. And we had a couple of chances in there, 20, although we didn't really create much with it. But at 6-2, a couple of people turned around to me and said, you know, will Willie's team talk at half time? We'll come out and we'll be okay. You know, even when in the semi-final, for example, when Catalan were 12-10 up, when they went 12-10 up on us, you never ever thought we was probably going to lose that game. And it was very similar in the final for me. I actually thought that Rovers would have come out second half and would have seen this. I don't know whether it's a thing that it's a real thing, this alleged second half team as well, where, you know, we go up another gear, we score another 3 or 4 tries in the second half and put the game to bed. That was never the case. But at half time, I wasn't really panicking. I always thought that Rovers could come out and do something. Whether they would remain to be seen. But the conditions for me were a big leveler. And obviously Sneyd and Warrington played the conditions far better than we did. But yeah, going into half time, it was just a case of we're only 1 score down. Don't panic, because Rovers don't seem to panic. Let's just get our heads into the game and let's see what second half brings. And we'll take it from there. So I wasn't really panicking per se. Disappointed a little bit with our ball in hand and stuff, yeah. But there was another full half to go. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Scott mentioned the attack there, James. And to be fair, you know, I was sat in the top tier at Wembley. So I was on the corner though. So it wasn't necessarily the top seat. But so you get a real good view of the players in terms of the lines and stuff. And what came evident to me is we seem to be sitting a lot deeper in our attacks than we do normally. So by the time that the Rovers had passed it 2 or 3 times down the line, Warrington's line was so fast anyway, we was already sort of only meeting them. We weren't having that quick, you know, what we've come accustomed to in Super League. And that is one thing, as good as our defence was, I do think our attack was limited, but I don't know. Do you think that was the game plan, like to not offer as much in attack? It seems to be quite territorial, possessional based. It was about not giving any quarters. There didn't seem to be much want to throw the ball around. So I don't know. I don't know if that was deliberate, but the lines we was running seemed to be so deep. We didn't afford the opportunity to give out. You know, when Tanganoa came on, he won't having the same impact that he's had in previous games, but he was running on it from so deep.
Yeah, like I said, I just wonder whether it's, you know, obviously we're going to give Warrington credit again, but I just wonder whether the weather played into that, you know, because like I say, our normal game is quite expansive and so getting the ball out wide, etc. And given the forecast that was happening, you know, more or less through the whole week, it wasn't going to be, seemed to be like going to be the conditions to throw the ball around, and maybe Peters took the view, and the coaching staff took the view that actually we might need to be a bit more conservative in this, and just rely on our defence and just basically try and grind it out. Because also about Warrington weren't throwing the ball around either. So I think for me that probably had a lot more to do with it, and just probably being more conservative and probably just maybe trying to play for an error. Which is potentially a bit of a negative situation to be in, but sometimes you've got to play the conditions, haven't you? But say Warrington were just on us so quickly. But as you said, I think where we were, we couldn't see how deep the lines were that the Rovers were running. It just seemed they just weren't making any progress.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Graham, there's one player who supporters of opposition sides have maybe questioned whether he actually turned up for the final. But there was a moment where, for me, he really did turn up. Michael Lewis, it was on, 51 minutes, where Michael Lewis knocks it on under the post. He looked like he'd wrapped it up and he got the ball, done a great defensive effort. He knocked it on. And then, following on from that, he gets a drop goal, a dropout, and he goes and nails probably one of the best dropouts I've ever seen in terms of distance, speed, pace. And there's one player who's been talked about in terms of his kicking. Well, for me, that was one of the best kicks of the game. And I think Mikey came up with probably the two best kicks of the game. One was obviously the match winner, but for me, that dropout where he absolutely nailed it. But what was impressive for me, Graham, is his response to the error. And what we're seeing now is a player who's channeling his frustration, his disappointment into a positive motion. And that is not something that has happened previously. But I'll tell you what, that moment there for me said, yeah, he's nailed on, he's switched on, and he's a player now we really, really need to take seriously.
Yeah, and I think that point you said there, John, about people questioning his sort of contribution towards the game overall, but for me, that's the sign of a great player. Is you don't see them for maybe 50, 60 minutes, but all of a sudden those big moments, they step up and they nail it, and they might do one thing. It's the old football analogy. He's only done 3 things in the game, but yeah, those 3 things, he scored a hat-trick, and he's done nothing else. He's just absolutely done his job. And the same with Mikey there. I think that when you watch it back, you'll see that kick travels 70 metres in total length. It goes out on the 30-metre line of Warrington there. And I think, yeah, there was a bit of an extra oomph behind it when you realised he was the one who'd coughed up the error that caused the back-to-back sets and that. So I'm sure there was a little bit of extra meat on that one when it went out. And I think I've seen a few stats around the kicking game, and look, Sneyd was absolutely booting us all over the park there in terms of pinning us back, turning us round, and making us work from deep within our own half very, very regularly. So that for me was a battle of the kickers. And just talking about kickers and Sneyd in particular, the one thing that I think has gone under radar a little bit, just to throw on the table here, is the fact that we know how good Sneyd is with ball off the tee in terms of those conversions or those penalty kicks that he gets. We did not give him a chance to get the kicking tee out, other than the try that they scored. That was the only time, and then kick off at the second half as well. So there wasn't any penalties given away that were in his range, or to gift them 2, 4, 6, 8 points, whatever he gets every single week with Warrington now with penalties. He's almost guaranteed 6 or 8 points before he even steps onto the pitch, because of how accurate he is with that. And we didn't give him a chance at all. The only one he did get was from the touchline, which was the only positive points he contributed during the game. But for me, that was again a discipline thing, an effort thing of how we control that area of piece of work. But yeah, when Mikey stepped up and hoofed it there, the big disappointment for me was we didn't capitalise on it and get points on the back of it. That would have just been the perfect end to that particular moment. But then again, it was a pressure reliever from what was, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 back-to-back sets on our own line, and to just go down the other end of the field and get the ball back ourselves rather than being facing another repeat set was sort of manna for heaven at that time, and just give us that breather after working so hard for for multiple minutes on a time.
Yeah, I tell you what, Scott, because of how tight the game was. It really was a game of moments. One moment for me that's not really been highlighted was the kick from 𝗪𝗏𝗏 that hit the post, and if it had bounced just a different way, 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗏 was literally ready to pounce on the ball, and that's what the game was, wasn't it, Scott? It was literally defined by a few moments. It wasn't a game where it was, you score, we score. It was literally them fine, minute moments, and I'm surprised that kick from Litton and then the opportunity to score hadn't been picked up more about how pivotal that could have been at that time. Because if he'd have scored that at that try, but that is the game, isn't it? Ifs, buts, maybes.
Ifs, buts, maybes. That's what the game is, especially in a tight game like a cup final like Saturday. Again, I mean, how many times do you see a ball at a post and it benefits the attacking team? Never usually the defensive team. It's usually the attacking team that benefit from it. In fact, a lot of kickers in recent years have actually aimed for the post, haven't they, to create a bit of mayhem. So when we've done it, you think, oh, we're going to benefit from this. And that's what I say. I said a few minutes ago, Warrington got a lot of the bounce of the ball on Saturday as well. A lot of the little bits and bobs went their way. But it's when I mentioned earlier in the pod, it's the 1%. It's the little things that you do that will get you over the line. Just going back to Graham's words on Mikey there, there's a point in the second half where I think it's Adam Allroyd's going through, and you think he's going to make the break, and Mikey puts in the most cleanest, unbelievable tackle around the play. What a tackle.
I'll tell you what, if there's any people who watch that game or coach a junior rugby league team or about how to execute the perfect tackle, that was it.
It's an unbelievable tackle, isn't it? Tackle. I'm sure it's Adam Allroyd, and they put the drop off ball to him, and it looks like he's going to go right through the gap, and then Mikey just comes from nowhere, arms round his legs, pulls him to the ground. It's the most cleanest textbook tackle ever. So people are saying, well, he hadn't done this with the ball. He's gone missing in the final again. Look at the 1% that he did to get us over the line. Dean Hadley, when he gathers that ball, when it's a loose ball on hour 10, it was like watching the NFL. When the ball goes loose in the NFL and all the helmets go diving in to try and win the ball. Dino goes in, wins the ball, and comes out with it. It was a big, big moment in the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott, another moment was when there was a kick put through and Broadbent's juggling it, and he's got Dufty right on him, trying and Broadbent, I think it was the 70th minute, and he's trying to juggle it, and he then regathers it, and he's got Dufty literally breathing down his neck, trying to, actually, they have massive moments because a try that swings it. That that is where you go. Actually, can Rovers come back from this?
Massive.
Yeah.
And how good was Jack Broadbent, by the way? Because every ball that they put up for him, it took everyone. Yeah, you can't do anything about Sneed's 20-40. That's just pure brilliance on behalf of the kicker. That's an outstanding kick. And that was in the 75th minute. Other teams would have folded then. Other teams, you're doing a 20-40, 5 minutes to go, you're 6-2 up in the final, you're putting your team on the front foot with a set of 6, 30 or so meters from your opponent's line, and other teams would have folded. Rovers didn't fold. They didn't fold. They kept themselves in the game. Let's see it out. Let's see our error out. Let's see where the 79th minute and the 59th second takes us. That's the OKR that we watch nowadays. If we have to win it in the last second, we'll win it in the last second. But hang in there and do the 1%.
Yeah, and I tell you what, James, there was probably that, I think what Scott just mentioned, spell where pretty much summed up the cup final. So where Rovers have been, I think they've done 4 consecutive sets, then did a short dropout, got the ball, regained it, went up the pitch, and then all of a sudden Sneed does a 20-40, and it's just, I think that literally summed up the game, James. It was just, that was the nature of it. Just when you thought you was getting over the gain line, you was getting the advantage, boom, the opposition, and that was for both sides. You just come back and get you and come up with another play where you just put it back on the back foot again.
Yeah, it was. It was just actually worldy. And I was, when it went in, I was just looking at the Warrington players, and they were just jumping up and down. And I think they thought they'd won the cup then, because they were, like I say, 20, 30 yards from Rovers' line. They had a set of 6, had a tiring, a team that Rovers that were tiring. They probably felt as though, they'd sort of given it their last in the last, before Sneyd took that kick in, and they thought, we've got to, get something out of this set, and we've won the game. But again, just Rovers just somehow managed to drag energy up from their bootstraps and hold them out. And I think we've spoken a lot of this season about how fit Rovers are this year. I think it really brought home to show on Saturday. As I said earlier in the pod, they were out on the feet. It could have been a slip, and the Warrington would have been in. Sneyd could have done a 1-pointer, and that would have been it. Even though it's only 5 points, that would have been it. They were just out on their feet, but somehow they managed to drag up some last bits of energy and resource and hold out, and then say the rest is history.
Yeah, I must admit, Graham, I think it was probably at that point where I thought, I can't see us, if anything, Warrington were getting stronger. It wasn't the Rovers in the ascendancy, it was Warrington getting the moments that counted. But I tell you what, Graham, never write off the Robins, because all of a sudden, and for me, I think the most pivotal part of the Robins winning the game was that desire from Davis when he made that run, that 10-metre run. But it wasn't just the meters he made, it was the desire, it was the aggressiveness of it. And if you watch it back, there's a real pivotal moment where I think Tyrone May makes a pass, and I think Toby King just goes in like he's going to intercept it, and he steps back. And if he makes that interception at that time, well, obviously that play doesn't happen. And it is then just like we've already said, them fine, really fine margin, them fine moments. Don't forget as well the offload from Hickle. We saw him do it previously in the second half where he offloaded it and it just went into it just all worked. But for me, that drive from Davis and getting him into the position and the aggression he showed, I think then led to the high tackle on him because they wanted to stop him. And it is them moments, isn't it? But and then, of course, what unfolded after that was just magic, wasn't it? But yeah, for me, Graham, that desire, that drive, that's what really, I think, had an impact on then going on to score that try.
Yeah, I think that moment that we talked about there, that Sneyd's 2040, that was the moment where I started to waver. That was the moment where I thought, this just isn't going to be our day. We haven't managed to get over the line yet. He's just done that. They're going to march down the other end. They're going to get something out of it. They're going to close the game out. But, after that set, when we got the ball back, we started deep on that set as well. We were in our maybe 10-metre zone, something like that, when we got the handover. So we've travelled on the 6 tackles. We've travelled about 80 metres with that before the penalty. And I think, if you watch that one set back, we knew that was it. That was the moment. That was our last chance saloon with it. And what said there was an air of desperation about it. But like you said, John, that extra 1%, whatever it was, that determination, and it resulted in the drawing of that penalty, which was probably an air of desperation on Warrington's end. Was it lazy? Was it fatigue? Whatever it was, but we managed to get that penalty on the back of it, that then set us up for the fact what was the defining moment of the whole cup final. Yeah,
I tell you what, Scott, really, it wasn't a great set, was it? As we seemed to dither. We saw Hargreaves taking a couple of runs in. We didn't know which way to go. There was no real set play. It wasn't, I know come of the moment, come of the man, or come of come on the moment. But it wasn't the perfect set yet. We just found a way. We just found a way. It was just.
I think Sam Ruckley takes the first ball in, doesn't he? And he gets into the 10 and he makes a decent extra couple of yards on the first carry. And then it comes out, and then Jared takes the next one in, I think. And then Tyrone has the one, and he gives it back to Jared again. So Jared does like 2 carries on the second and third tackle, I think. Which
There was nothing was it? It was just
it was just desperation. Yeah, it was just right. Let's just get this. Let's see what we can create out of this set, but without actually really creating anything until the ball ended up back at Tyrone again. And if you watch the video, you can just see him look up, and he sees that there might be something on. He can see that Hicko's on side as well. He can see that he's behind the ball, and he just puts that kick in. You know, even at that point, you're thinking it's just potluck, isn't it? It's just potluck. The chances of Warrington fielding that and getting it dead, they're the favourites to nullify that kick. They are, you know. So, and what happened?
Let's be honest. It wasn't a great kick. It wasn't normally any other day a team would defuse that, wouldn't they? Because it was
yeah. And then realistically, when you look at what it should have been diffused by Lindop. He should have been diffused with his arms. He should have got it out there with his arms. He should have just booted it to Rose Head if need be, you know. But at the end of the day, the kick was in there. I've done it a lot tonight. I've talked about the 1%. Tom Davies could have given up on that. He could have actually, you know, seen the kick, left it to Petter, just Petter get there, or he don't get there, Warrington defuse it. But Tom Davies saw an opportunity. He saw an opportunity that if I give everything, if I give the extra 1%, something might come of this. Now, Lindop was favoured to get that ball dead. Of course he was. He could have got it dead with his hands, with his bounce up, and then it hit his thigh, didn't it? And then it came through his arms again, and then he grounded it with his belly, and you know, it was all over the shop, wasn't it? But Davies was still there to ground the ball. And if he hadn't done the extra 1% of trying to be there at that one time, you'd open the cup. So it's all the little things in the 80 minutes that we've observed that culminate in that final moment of Davies touching the ball down. It wins the game for you.
Great example of don't die wondering.
Absolutely.
If you can, get there.
Yeah.
If you can't,
always.
You know, but if you can.
And get there. And if you fail, if you get there and out comes of it, at least you've got there.
Yeah.
So always get there. Never give up. Never, ever give up on any potential player, because you never know what's going to happen with that ball with the defence. You could always come up with something, and it came up with Tom. Brilliant.
James, in that moment when he saw obviously what unravelled, specifically just when you saw Davies touch the ball, not knowing whether it's going to be a try or not, what was your first reaction?
The first reaction was, oh, it's been knocked on. But just to sort of follow up on what Scott was saying about those, you know, never giving up, the fact that Davies got down and got that ball on him, you know, it was making Liam Moore have to make a decision. You know, whether that was, you know, say it was a try or no try, he had to make a decision. And from where we were in sort of like right in the right hand corner. It looked, you know, for me, it looked like it grounded it.
So then, when you saw Liam Moore go try,
yeah, but it's just the way it came out. It's just the way it all came out, and just, you know, I thought, oh, it's got to be a knock on. I thought, well, I don't think the Warrington players got to it. I just think it's been knocked on by Hickou. But then when he sent it up as a try, it was just like, hang on here, it's definitely grounded it. The only thing that they got to debate or decided is, has Hickou knocked it on? Have Warrington diffused it? And the more and more you looked at it, you could tell, you know, Lindop had missed it. You thought, oh, Hickou's hand was coming in. He's going to get his fingertips to it. But when you looked when he went to the side angle, it was miles away from it. It was then I was thinking, he's going to give this. And when he just kept looking at the grounding, just making sure he was in field of play, and you could clearly see he was, I thought, he's going to give this, he's going to give this. And when he gave it, it was just like, oh, unbelievable. And I just, it was just thinking, shit, Mikey's got to take the goal and kick now. He's not even our third, you know, he's our third choice kicker, you know, the club. And he's got to kick it from the touchline in the pissing rain. you know, to win it, because I thought we can't go to Golden Point because we know what happened in Golden Point with who was on the other side. And I thought, yeah, I couldn't look. I got to stage I couldn't look, but I thought I've got to look just in case it goes over.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Warrington fans have been through the rule book with a fan tooth comb, and they've come up with the wrong answer. Obviously,
well, they missed the important bits, haven't they? So
they've missed the important bits about obviously also about the differentiation between a defending player and an attacking player,
and having control downward pressure.
Yeah, so the right decision was made. I think most sensible people will agree with that. But at the time, Graham, I wasn't even thinking about winning the game. I was just happy to be level. I was going Golden Point, like just we're in the game now, let alone the fact that Michael Lewis has got the opportunity to slot it over and win the game. I wasn't even in that man space. It was like, we're level, we're in the game now. You know, I think I've even lost sense of the time on the, you know, the clock. But at that time, I was in the game. And then, like James said, like, for Michael Lewis then just come and slot over. I mean, yeah, what a moment that was.
Yeah, and I think that the emotion of the try, it was just so reminiscent of 2023 against Leigh when it was Matt Parcell touching on it. And it took ages on the video ref to get that decision through a few minutes from the end, and Schneider had to slot one over to bring us level again to go to. So there was so much similarity, and I think for us where we were just having those flashbacks of we're level. Hang on a minute, we've got a kick to win it here. If we miss it, oh no, Snead's going to do us in Golden Point. Exactly, James said that was our thinking at that particular time. But you know, we talked a little while back about Lewis doing nothing in the game, but that was the biggest moment in the game in the 79th minute that came up. And again, just shall I watch it? Shall I turn away? If it goes over, I need to see it going over. And where we were literally behind the sticks off to the right hand side as he was, as we were looking at it, we were right in, watching that down the barrel come over, and it never ever wavered 1 second. From the second it left its boot, we were up. We knew it struck it true, and it never moved one jot, only to just drift in right over the black dot in the middle. It was it was a beautiful kick under the utmost pressure. But listening back to Peters afterwards and those moments, that's what defines great players, around being able to ice those moments. And like I said, it might have been innocuous for 79 minutes, but in that one moment he did what he needed to do, and that was detach himself from all that pressure, all that emotion, and just absolutely focus on the task at hand, which was to get that ball over the crossbar and between those uprights. Yeah,
I mean, Scott, as a celebrant, you'll be familiar with the seven stages of death. Well, that was like the three stages of celebration, because you had the actual live moment, which was Davies grounding the ball. Then you had the actual awarding of the try, and then you had the Lewis kick. So we celebrated things three times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing about it all is that, as Graham just alluded to, the pressure on Mikey. We talk about pressure, and good players absorb pressure. They deal with pressure. Mikey, just as he said on the interview, he just went through his usual process, the process that he would do every time he takes a kick at goal. But you can't begin to imagine. There must have been a little bit of, what if I miss this? If I get it, brilliant. If I miss this, we win Golden Point. And I guess you've got to detach yourself, haven't you, from all that noise that's going on around you and all what's going on in your head. And you're at near enough 80 minutes, your body is absolutely shattered. It's absolutely knackered. It's battered and bruised. And you've got to step up and just pop that between the H's. And if you do, chances are it'll win you the cup. I still got to admit, though, when he kicked it, I'm thinking, Warrington are going to do a short 10 here. They're going to come up with the ball, because we're very rarely do a few short 10s. And you're thinking, this ain't over yet. There's a minute to go and Snead's going to come up with something magical just at the end. But luckily it never happened and we diffused the kick-off. But yeah, those three elements of celebration. I think on Mikey's kick, I think after the try was given, I think I sat down in my seat and everybody else around me was stood up and I thought, I don't know if I could even watch the kick. And I did. As he kicked it, I think I just about stood up as he kicked it. And from where we were right behind him. So we were on level 2 on that side. So we just saw the ball float right through the sticks. It was like, oh my God. It was just limbs, chaos. Chaos.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, James, we've seen Mikey. His kicking this season has been incredible because we've seen him nail ones that are absolutely on the touchline. You think, how's he going to nail? How's he going to do this? And then we've seen him miss some of the easiest one. He's kicking. So what was really interesting is I'm sure I read or heard, I can't remember that they said that about Mikey Lewis actually practice kicking that much. He relies on his own ability just to go through process. And Willie Peters had questioned whether to say, no, actually, Mikey, you should practice a bit more. But actually just trusted in Mikey Lewis doing what he does. And you know what? Come off the hour, come off the man, because he nailed it. And he did exactly what we wanted him, what exactly we needed him to do. He just did it.
Yeah, I did. I sort of thought that was really interesting. But then I suppose he just sums Mikey up. He's an instinct player. And that, is essentially just kicking goals on instinct. He doesn't need, feels as though he has to sort of put all the routine practice in, it's because he knows he can do it. And that, like I say, people were saying, oh, he's done nothing in the game, he's gone missing again, but he's won the game. At the end of the day, Mikey Lewis has won that game. It doesn't, he's won it in the 79th minute. And, like I think Graham said earlier, if you play, football analogy, player does 3 things in the game, scores a hat trick and wins the game. Oh, I didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. He won the game. And must have ice in his veins.
I'll tell you what, Graham. It's really easy now, isn't it? Because we're doing this Robin pod and we're doing the podcast, and I'm going to ask you a question, which is really probably quite easy to put into context. Because I'll say to you, what was your emotions at the end of full time when the hooter went and Rovers had won? And you'll probably give me a stand answer in terms of, you cannot bottle that moment, can you? That pure 10 seconds after the hooter where you're hugging, the relief, the endorphins are going off. Literally, it's the best drug in the world that you can't bottle. It's priceless. It's just, I dare any person who's watching this or listening to this to even be able to go back to how they felt at that time, because I don't think you can. It's just the relief, the joy, the ecstasy. It was just, literally just an outpouring.
Yeah, 100%. I think I said it earlier on. It is something different, but for some it'll be relief, some it'll just be pure joy, and like that, like you said, just looking around at that 15 seconds after the hook gone and the recognition that we'd actually done it. I don't think anybody knew what to do. It was just, everything was just done, and whatever happened just happened, and there were people jumping about, there were people crying, there were people hugging, there were people just stood in disbelief, pinching themselves to see if it was actually real. There's just so much pure, raw emotion that, like you said, Johnny, you can't bottle it up, and you can't fake that in any way. It was just, true, that whatever happened to people, that was just true emotion. And I can't remember when I saw you on Sunday about there's only sport that can do this. I don't know too much else where you can generate this level of that feeling that you get, that 10, 15, 20 seconds, whatever it is. There's only sport that has the power to do that, and it can be equally as positive as it was for us on Saturday as it can be negative as it was 2 years ago against Lee, and so there is a high and a low to it. But yeah, if you could try and replicate it, I don't think you'd ever get near that moment again. You might get 50, 60%, but you'll never reach that again unless something similar happens to you. You're on mute, John.
I think it's interesting, Scott, because we probably, looking over the season, we put our worst performance of the season in. I dare say Warrington probably put their best performance of the season in, and it's cup final. Don't get me wrong, but maybe does that show the levels? You know, that where we could, you know, yeah. Do you know what? We showed desire. We showed, you know, we kept going. But in terms of free flowing rugby league, we've been so much better this season. But we dug in and we got the result. Whereas Warrington, it felt like they put everything into that game, and that was the best they came up with. And do you know what? I don't want to say that in a disrespectful way, because I thought, do you know what? Warrington actually were great. It was brilliant. They actually, their line speeding, they did a job on us. They really did. Sam Burgess, he brought the players back who shouldn't have maybe been playing, came and did a job. He got his players who were already playing. They did a job, and they did it to the best level that they could. So I don't want to be disrespectful to Warrington, but over the course of the season that Warrington played so far, they've not been great. And that's where, you know, I take a bit of comfort from that. That as yeah, like I said, that Warrington probably their best game, but not necessarily our best game.
Their best against our worst still wasn't good enough to beat us ultimately after 80 minutes, which speaks volumes of where Rovers are and where we've come from as a club. We only have to go back maybe 3 or 4 years, where if we'd have been under the pump like we were on Saturday, we'd have probably scored 20, 30 points. But that Rovers team of 2025 don't do that anymore. What's its average concede 9 points a game, isn't it? So even when we were at our very best, we still only conceded 6. And that came off a deflected kick. And that speaks volumes for the team and the level and the standards that Hull KR set for themselves now. When we're not at our very, very best, we can still win games of rugby. And that speaks volumes for the club. And you're right, Warrington was superb. Sneed was brilliant. It was a masterclass of kicking. But what did they get from it? Apart from one try that came off it and skidded off the turf into Julius's hands and he scored. They never really liked scoring. Again, apart from all that possession and all the brilliant kicks he put in, because Rovers' defence was just absolutely exemplary. Exemplary, it really was. And that's where Hull KR found themselves now. In that they don't have to be at the very best to still win games, even at the highest level. And Warrington must think, how did that get away from them? How did that get away from them? But I'll say again, it's all down to the 1%. And I've said it all right through the pod this evening. That's what it boils down to. Years ago, we might not have done those. But today, in the modern game in 2025, every single Hull KR player knows their job, knows their role, and knows their cog in the machine. It's fantastic.
Yeah, James, loaded question here. Mickey McAlorum, 27 minutes, 7 tackles, 12 metres. Was it worth it?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it was a massive risk. We all knew it was. But at the end of the day, the means, you know, the end justifies the means. I think what we've done, I mean, we knew Lytton could play 80 minutes if he had to. But, you know, given the conditions, I think it probably would have been a stretch even for Jez to turn that in. But I think we were expecting, you know, McAlorum to be on for about 15, 20 minutes. And then he, managed to get 27 out of it. And it didn't look to be struggling. I thought Warrington would probably target him more than they did. But, fair dues to him. he was brought in to do a job. He did it, and he said, "I'm going to take the next 3 weeks off."
I suppose what was really interesting as well, James, is what's been revealed this week in terms of the squad announcement for Catalan is the fact that 𝗬𝗲𝗏 shouldn't have played.
No, exactly. Injured. No, I think and they've done well to keep that one quiet. I think obviously because he obviously had been banned for the 2 games before Wembley. And I thought when the squad came out, I thought, he's just being rested, because of after everything going on over the last weekend. But no, he's been going about for 4 weeks, and again, just a phenomenal effort. The fact he was still driving that ball in the last, as part of that last set with 2 drives, I think it just shows what an outstanding player he is, and just how he's got this club, how he just really has taken Rovers to his heart and just put in the effort and that he has throughout his whole career. And you've still got Roosters fans saying, "Can we have him back?" He's been absolutely. I think he's just been absolutely phenomenal this year for us.
Yeah, I'd say what was outstanding, Graham, is that actually out of all the props, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 was on the pitch longer than any of them. He made 26 tackles. He made 95 meters, and this is a player who, by 𝗀𝗬𝗋𝗄𝗏 shouldn't have been playing because he was injured. But ultimately, those 2 players, wasn't he, who was brought into this side to get the Robins over the line in terms of silverware. Mickey McAlorum and 𝗬𝗏𝗏 were specifically brought in to, improve the culture, the winning mentality, whatever we phrase it as, but basically to get us over the line. And then 2 players, bearing in mind, one came back from an injury which was supposed to be 12 to 14 weeks. Actually, he came back after 7 weeks. And one player who was supposed to be injured for 4 weeks, what we didn't know about. Yet they came into the final and did not only a good job, and probably did get us over the line. So, you know what? Fair credit for them deals.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge element of risk in all of that, Jono. If it had backfired, things that had gone our way, and then it had come out that we're playing players that shouldn't have been because they were busted, and you can sort of see the storylines now. But thankfully we don't have to deal with that. And I think the clues have been there with Hargreaves for a little while. I've seen him with a bag of ice on his calf for a couple of weeks before he got his suspension a couple of weeks ago. So that I don't think is a brand, well, unless any different, but that clue of the bag of ice on his calf has been knocking around for a few weeks. But the fact that he came back in after that 2-week layoff through suspension, I just assumed he was fit to play. And that enforced rest would have been good for whatever knock he was carrying, and therefore he was good to go. But to put in that sort of performance, knowing that you've got that type of injury and that it could backfire on you, look, it was a gamble that Peters was prepared to take. The same with McAlorum, because I think he realised the importance of those players, not just from the numbers, because that's one side of the story, but just their presence, the extra bits that having them stood next to you in the line brings out of you as an individual as well. I don't know how many minutes. Was it 27? I think you said McAlorum, but again, it was at that time when it's a tight game. We know what McAlorum can do in those situations in keeping things tight and keeping things locked up, and that's what he was doing before he got his injury in that first 25, 28 minutes, 30 minutes, and then sort of disappears and Jez comes on and does his stuff. So they were big calls that Peters had to make, and the coaching staff during the week. And if, I say, God forbid, if it had gone against us the game, and then we'd have found out that we're playing busted players. Well, Bill Leyland's fully fit. Why couldn't he play instead of McAlorum and not risk that? So it just doesn't bear thinking about the what ifs. We've just got to now let him rest and recuperate, and then come back in 3 or 4 weeks' time and hopefully put a good shift in to see us through the regular season.
Yeah, I tell you what as well, Scott, when we start looking at the Lansdowne Trophy winner, of course, Max Need, great kicking game. Actually, it's really funny because I heard a lot about Max Need's kicking game. I watched it back, the game on TV, and for me, it wasn't. He came up with some great kicks, but they weren't always the best kicks. But do you know why I think they weren't always the best kicks, Scott? Because we had a player who diffused a lot of Max Need's kicks quite well. And Jack Broadbent, for me, I know the voting was unanimous in terms of Max Need, in terms of the Lancashire Trophy. But Jack Broadbent, some of the hits he took, bringing that ball out of play, 231 metres he made, and not only did he make 231 metres, he was getting battered from Warrington because their defence was right on us. And do you know what? I thought Broadbent, I think for me, not necessarily not because of his attacking play, this was one of his, if not the best game I've seen him play in defence. Just that willingness to run. And I think he dropped the ball once or twice and it went backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just there every time and he went and went and went.
I think he carries in like the 72nd minute and he runs into three of their forwards. He actually knocks them back. He actually carries them for an extra 2 yards. I mean, he's not the biggest kid in Jack, is he? He's only he's a back, isn't he? He's your typical full-back stroke, centre stroke winger. He's not the biggest kid. But I tell you what, he's got out of the line, hasn't he? Absolute desire and heart. He loves playing for this rugby club. He loves playing for Hull KR. No matter where you play him, full-back, centre, wing, he loves playing for this club. And he never, ever lets you down. I've never known him. I don't remember Jack having a bad game ever. Even when he's dropped a few balls or he's made a couple of errors, he gets back on the bike and he rectifies it. He's such a safe pair of hands. And he's only relatively young himself, isn't he? What is he, 22, 23, something like that?
I'll tell you what, he's not that young.
Is he not?
No.
I don't know.
Oh, he's he's late 20s.
Is he really? I never knew that. I thought he was a lot younger than that. It's amazing, that. But he never lets you down. Never ever lets you down. And coming out, he diffused all the kicks. I mean, Snead put a bit of variation on his kicks as well, didn't he? On a number of occasions, But he always seemed to be there to sweep up or clear up or get rid of any danger or. It's just a reliable rugby league player, is Jack, and he's in 8 out of 10 every single week for me. I felt sorry a bit for Snead because I think that the Lansdowne Trophy winners picked 5 minutes before full time, isn't it? And obviously they were on for winning the game at that point, so you suddenly can't then change the Lansdowne Trophy winner. So to actually go up as a loser and win it for the third time and actually have nobody present it to him as well, which was a bit outrageous, to be honest. He just picked it up off the box, didn't he, himself? It looks a bit poor, that, but he don't want that, does he? He's won 2 with that lot, and they won the cup with them, and they're the ones he wants to remember. But he's always going to remember holding that Lansdowne Trophy as a loser. And I think if he could erase that and give it to somebody like Jack Broadbent, I think he'd do that given the opportunity. It's hard to pick if you had to pick a Lansdowne Trophy winner out of Rovers' team, Jack won't be far off, would he? Yeah, I think he'd be one of the favourites if you had to pick one.
I'll tell you what, Scott, you said he was early 20s. I said he was late 20s. I'll meet you in the middle. He's 25.
25, okay. I didn't think he was that old, though. I thought he was about 22, 23.
I'll tell you what, James, another player, he was actually the top meter maker in the Challenge Cup final, and he's a player who's, do you know what, he's going to become a great, I know he is, Tom Davis, 241 metres. A lot of people question whether we'd be able to replace Ryan Hall in terms of the metres he makes out of back play. He's a different player, but I tell you what, he's an absolute warrior, isn't he? A war horse. He just runs and runs and runs. apparently he's not the brightest, and I think a few Rovers players have alluded to that fact. But you know what? He goes and goes and goes, and I can see him being a player who stays at our club for a good number of years now, because he's still. I'm not going to ask Scott for his age, but he's got a player he's got a good few years ahead of him. So he's yeah, I love him. I just love Tom Davies. I just think he's great, and he came up with the most meters in the final.
Yeah. I mean, I'd always rated him when he was at Wigan and when he was at Catalans, and so when we announced we'd signed him, I was over the moon, really, because end of the day, Ryan Hall is a one-off, isn't he? And he's always going to be hard to replace. But I think, as you said, we've got a very different player in Tom Davies. He just looks dangerous to me every time he runs out, and just looks as though he's going to make a break. He's always there, just to sort of take the offloads from Hiku, and obviously he's now cemented himself permanently in as a legend within the club. And yeah, I'd love to sort of see him stay with the club for a lot longer. He is. I think he's great. He always looks dangerous to me when he's got the ball running out. Yeah, I think he's very underrated as well within the game. I think we've, as I said, I rated him when he was at Catalan, rated him when he was at Wigan. But I think other clubs or other fans of the game don't probably really appreciate what he does. But we've certainly seen it this season, and yeah, he's now really integral part of that team.
Yeah, and Graham, I think me personally, there's a player that I've reserved special praise for. Now, we saw 3 players in the cup final for Rovers made more than 50 tackles. Dean Hadley, he was on the pitch for 80 minutes. He made 53 tackles, 84 metres. Jai Whitbread, he was on the pitch for 73 minutes. He made 53 tackles as well and 86 metres. But the captain, 𝗬𝗂𝗱𝗏 𝗀𝗃, 57 tackles, 123 metres. And what I want to reserve special praise for as well, Graham, is how he's conducted himself in terms of being a captain of Hull Kingston Rovers, particularly during this time of leading the side to Wembley, and also how he's then conducted himself post the final, and how he's expressed and told us about his love for Hull Kingston Rovers, his opportunity to play at the club, the fact he wants to see his career out with the Red and Whites. I think 𝗬𝗂𝗱𝗏 𝗀𝗃 deserves extra credit. He put in a captain's performance on Saturday, and the stats back it up. It's not just us saying it; it's the stats that back it up. And for me, 𝗬𝗂𝗱𝗏 𝗀𝗃, he deserves a lot of praise for what he did on Saturday and after that as well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, John, when you watch the game back, you appreciate that effort a lot more. When you're watching it live, I had no idea that those were the sort of numbers he was putting in. But when you watch it back and understand those 57, he's there in a lot of the tackles that made, not just second, third, he's first man in. He's ferocious in his defence as well on some of the ones, certainly in that second half when we were under the pump. So, yeah, absolutely captain knock, as you said there. And the beauty of, I think, of having 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗏 with us for the last few years is I think we've seen him grow into that captaincy role. And I think this sort of last week or two of the build up to the final and then post the final, he speaks very, very well anyway about rugby in general, but you can get a feel from when he's speaking about how passionately he speaks about the club, how passionately he speaks about the community, the fans, etc. And he gets it, he understands it, and that I think is something you can't teach. That you've got to learn, that you've got to live it and breathe it. And I think he absolutely does 100% do that. I know Peters has got a lot of faith in him and trust in him, and you could just see after the game that going through Hudgell, Paul Lakin, Peters, etc., all had a huge hug for 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗃 at the end of that game.
Yeah, and I mean, you see, there's a number of sides in rugby league, in sport generally. Sometimes they don't necessarily put gravitas on the captain. I think as Hull Kingston Rovers supporters, we hold our captains in high esteem. We look to them that, you look at the ones who've gone before. I mean, bloody hell, Scott, you can tell me about captains, the ones that you've seen, and Minchella is deserving his place at the top table now because he's doing the hard yards. He's had a great story. Well, not great story. He's resilient. He's had a tough time. He's come back. He's now propelling his career in the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers. He's lifted a trophy. He deserves his name etched into the captain's bar under the East Stand. And hopefully it's one that goes bum, bum, and you see it named, listed for a long time. Because for me, I just, and also what's great as well, Scott, he's so young. He's got so long to go ahead of him.
He's only 17, isn't he? No, he's a great leader, isn't he? And you mentioned there, I mean, hey, he's only one of two captains that have captained Hull Kingston Rovers to a Challenge Cup final win. And one of those was your player coach, Roger Millward. So as only an out-and-out player, is the only Hull Kingston Rovers captain to win a Challenge Cup at Wembley. Roger is a legend in his own right, and he's on a pedestal way above, for me, anybody else that's ever captained the club. But you go through the captains of my era, like Dave Watkinson and Mike Smith and players like that, fantastic captains, great leaders of our club. They were all local lads, by the way, But then you look at, well, apart from obviously Watkin was from York, but relatively local. But then you look at Elliot, who comes from out of town, he's a West Yorkshire lad, etc., etc. But again, he's bought into the genre and the style and the structure of Hull KR. He knows what it means to the people of East Hull. He knows what it means to pull the shirt on. He knows what it means to wear the badge on his chest. A couple of lads said to me a few weeks ago, they thought that Elliot had gone off the boil a bit in regards to the way he was playing the game, and they thought it was lacking a bit of form. But if you look at his stats week on week, he's making 50-plus tackles every single game he plays. He's making 90, 100, 120 metres every game he plays. So he's got consistency every week. And even when you think he might not be in the game, he's always in the game. And he's always leading his team around the field. And he's always expressing himself as a leader and a captain. Hey, and don't get me wrong, there's other leaders in that team as well. Willie's always liked his sort of his leadership group, as he's called them, hasn't he? There are a number of leaders and captains in that team, to be fair. But Elliot is the leader. Elliot is the captain, and I think he's, again, you talk about buying into what OKR is. He bought into that from the very moment he signed, I think, and the journey that he's made for the club to become the captain and then lead the club to, like last year, grand final and Challenge Cup finals and playoff semi-finals. It's going to go down in history as one of the greatest captains for me. And he is the only player captain at the moment to have won a Challenge Cup trophy for Hull KR. As I say, Roger was a player coach. Roger's in his own right, on his own pedestal. But Elliot is the only player as a captain to have led Hull KR to a Challenge Cup final. Unbelievable, that. Unbelievable stats. Really is.
Yeah, and James Scott, I mean, he says he's right, but like I said about Elliot, it's how he comes across. I think he's grown up so much in probably such a short space of time because he had to grasp an opportunity to get back into Super League. And also under Willie Peters, he's learned so much. And, like Scott said, he's not the only leader in the side, but he is a leader. Elliot Minchella is the one who's leading Jared Warrer-Hargreaves. He's the one who's leading Mickey McAlorum. He's the one who's telling Mikey Lewis to get back in your box sometimes. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's the one who's able to do it, but the way he does it is working. And, for me, I've not seen a captain like this. I just think as well, he's a great bloke. You know, every time you hear him talk and speak, and especially about Hull Kingston Rovers, you know, if I tell you what, if anyone's got the programme from Saturday, the Challenge Cup final, how he says about, oh, my daughter's born in Hull now, I'm from Hull. Like, you know, everything is about how he just wants to be at the club. And do you know what? When he said about he didn't want to ever leave Rovers, you know, he's cemented himself in the history of the Robins. Hopefully, time prevails where he will be here for as long as we need him to be here, because we want him to be here and we need him to be here, and that's the trajectory of the club. But yeah, I'm if there's an 𝗪𝗂𝗱𝗏 fan club, I'm joining it.
No, I think I'll join you as well, Jono. But no, he has been fantastic, and I think, you know, like I said, those stats, just the 57 tackles and the meter he made on Saturday, just sort of really epitomising what it's all about. He just gets on and does the job efficiently and effectively. You know, Scott was saying, yeah, some of his mates saying, well, he seems to have lost a bit of form this year, but it's sometimes what you do in the background that's important. It's him doing, you know, the hard work and the hard yards that allows, you know, the likes of Mikey and Tyrone and Davis and Burgess and Hicko, etc., to then flourish and sort of get us to where we are. And, you know, I think is that sort of thing that just really goes under the radar, and you can tell the players just want to play for him as a leader on the patch. And he says there is a lot of leaders on that park, but they listen to him. You know, he gets them motivated, he gets them going. And I'm just always amazed, you know, when he's on Sky, and how well he comes across as well. You know, it comes across so well on there. You're thinking, well, actually, if that's what's coming across there, imagine what it's coming like when he's talking about something that he's really passionate about in terms of, you know, the club and what it means to him and what it means. You know, he wants to make sure Rovers are getting as far and doing as best as they can, and he's going to basically drag us where he needs to be. And yeah, fantastic if he can start the rest of his career with the club. I think he's signed up for another 5 years already, or something, 4 or 5 years, something. Because they did sign a long-term contract, didn't he? So yeah, hopefully, like I said, John, is going to be in the captain's bar. It's going to be 𝗪𝗂𝗱𝗏, and hopefully they'll put little trophies next to it as well, and then we're getting lots of trophies going against it.
Yeah, Graham, you was in Queen Victoria Square on Sunday. The celebrations, just the amount of people who turned up as well, let alone the people who were on the roadside going from Craven Park to down Newbridge Road, Ulmus Road, all the way down to Hull City Hall. It was one of the moments where you had to be there. Like you had to experience it, because you know, I rushed back from London as soon as we got home, literally dumped the gear in the house. We had about half an hour, and I purposely watched the celebrations from when Rovers won the Challenge Cup in 1980, and the scenes. I mean, I can only imagine what there would have been like to be there with the amount of people there. It looked magical, and I had to see that to go, this is what we're going to. And do you know what? When we got to Queen Victoria, it was the amount of people who were there, you know, thousands upon thousands. And most of these people had been at Wembley the day before as well, you know, and everyone had made the effort to get there. And just magical scenes, Graham.
Yeah, sorry, John. I was just looking online for 𝗪𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗏fanclub.com just to buy that website up. So
yeah, sign me up. Yeah. Sign me up.
I'll be in touch. Keep posted. Yeah, I mean that session, that you know, that spectacle in Victoria Square on Sunday was absolutely special, and you know, to experience it in 1980. This was what I'm saying about those moments meaning different things to different people. I was there in 1980, stood in pretty much exactly the same spot in 2025. You know, reliving that, having to wait 45 years to repeat that moment, which is why it was so, you know, so special. But to see so many people there celebrating that occasion, you know, on the back of only the day before, it was euphoric. It was everything we wanted it to be, and I think that ability to recognise that and cement that, what it means to the people, for the players and the club and the staff and all that, and to see what it means to see the volume of people there celebrating that success. It just really embeds for me that passion. If you're ever in doubt what winning a trophy means to the club, just relive that, that 24 hours from the final whistle at Wembley all the way through to Victoria Square, and seeing how much impact it's had. And this is only the start of it. The legacy on the back of this is going to be around the new people attracted to the club, the kids who in the schools who want to get involved because the Challenge Cup's been to their school, and that I don't think we can underestimate it. And I was sort of laughing with my brother over the last couple of days because we've got a photograph of ourselves holding the Challenge Cup back in 1980, and it put something inside of me, that particular moment of being able to experience all the Wembley win and the holding of the Challenge Cup that was bottled up for 45 years, to then bring it back out again on Saturday evening. It was just incredible, incredible few days, topped off by the scenes that we saw in Victoria Square, just, the drone shots and the noise and the flags and the flares and the people, the colour, everything about it was just celebratory. And it was just one of those moments where I hope people take a minute or two just to appreciate what that moment means and what it means in the here and now. Because if we go on another 45 years again, there's going to be a lot of people, waiting a long while to experience that again. So just remember it, take it all in, soak it all up, enjoy it for what it is, and then hopefully, we get to experience it again in the near, not too distant future with other success.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, there was numerous people who held the trophy on the balcony, all deserving of that moment. There's probably 3 people for me who probably need pointing out a little bit more than the others. None of them are players, which is funny enough. But one was Craig Escott. Magical moment to see him. Someone who's Rovers through and through. The struggles he's going through, and the fact that he got this great opportunity to be able to share and revel in the glory of Hull Kingston Rovers winning the Challenge Cup. Another one was Bonesy, a person who's devoted pretty much his life to, he works for the club. He don't work for the club. He gives his life to the club. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle for him. Probably the last person though, Scott, is Neil Hudgell. Someone who is, invested his life, his finance, his emotions into Hull Kingston Rovers for not just a year, 2 years, 3 years. He's plucked us from the depths of pretty much going out of existence. He's now able to revel and enjoy the moment that we never thought would come. But the reason it's come is because of Neil Hudgell, ultimately, because I think if there was a point, wasn't there, Scott, where he wasn't going to invest in the club, I think he'd had enough. It was just too much. Thankfully, he galvanised and he got reimagined. He brought Paul Akin back to the club, and look where we are now. But he deserves the praise more than probably any player, any coach, because without Neil Hudgell, we would not be in Queen Victoria Square on Sunday evening celebrating Challenge Cup victory.
He's a very humble guy, isn't he? I sent him a message after the final Saturday night, just thanking him. Just said, "That's for you, mate. That's for you. All what you've just said there, Jono, the financial support, the slog, the hard work, everything that he's given to the club." And he just texted me back with one simple line, and he just put, "It's been a full team effort, mate." And straight away, he took all the praise off himself, because if you go back all these years, and Neil, for me, Neil's responsible for this. I don't care what anybody says. He's the reason why Saturday happened. But if you go back even further to the RSG, and to add John Keith, who kept the club going, and even people who are no longer with us today, people like Joan Rudd and Maggie Fallowfield and people like that, people who were doing bucket collections, people who were trying just to raise a little bit of money just to keep the club going, signing a player from Australia, paying the flights so we could get an Australian player to come and play for the club on a quagmire of a pitch. You know, when you look at where the club has come, and all these people, Neil ultimately for me will always be what the reason we won on Saturday, because without Neil it doesn't happen. But there's also lots of other people in the background as well, where if they don't do what they've done over the years, Saturday didn't just happen. It's been a journey to get from where we've come from trouble at the top, from Tim Wilby saying there'll only be one team in Hull. How wrong was he? Where's he now? You know, from that point in time, the journey the club's made, the journey to Super League, to getting relegated again, to coming back to Super League again, to now kicking the team onwards and moving it further. Saturday just didn't happen. And the fact that Neil messaged me back and said, this has been a huge team effort, sums the man up to me. Because he realises that there's so many people that have played a role here as well. Not most of them people like Bonesy, as you've mentioned, you know, people who are the heartbeat of the club. And fans are part of that as well. Fans are part of the heartbeat of the club. Without the fans, there's no club, you know, and people are quick to recognise that as well. But for me, I believe that Saturday, while it was for all of us, and Neil has always said it's for all of us, it was for Neil. And I don't think I have ever seen Neil smile and laugh as much as he did on Saturday when he lifted that cup above his head in front of the fans at Wembley. It was like a whole pressure had released off his shoulders, and that he'd been waiting for that one moment in time just to say, as Hull KR owner, I've lifted a piece of silverware from my club. And nobody deserves it more than Neil Hudgell. And I'll tell him that every day if I need to. And he'll never take it. And never accepts the praise. But he just needs to accept that we are where we are, because without him, we wouldn't be. Simple as that.
Yeah. And also, James, he's a busy man as well, isn't he? He's not as a... You know, he's one of the leading solicitors in terms of, you know, actually... One of the biggest things he did was bring Paul Aiken in, because that's allowed him to then go back, as daft as it sounds, on his tools to do his day-to-day job, where ultimately I think the crossroads was at the time he couldn't do both. He couldn't be the chairman of Rovers and he couldn't be a solicitor. And I tell you what, and Neil Hudgell, of course, bloody hell, Paul Aiken, what a job! The professionalism. Do you know what? I think there needs to be a lot of praise put on to the off-field staff. The way this club has evolved. The fact we're playing last. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm paying for tickets to go to Las Vegas. I'm going to Wembley. Everything's good. You know what I mean? And they've brought a winners range out now, for let alone the Wembley range for t-shirts and. But you know what? They hit every nail on the head at the moment. And Paul Aiken, do you know what? I think I've spoke to him. It's not a job; it's a lifestyle choice. If you work for Kingston Rovers, you don't just do the job. You are on call to do whatever. But the way they do it is by making it so important. You are so important. And Paul Aiken, what he's done as well with the club, you know, there's so many people. Do you know what? This is a problem, isn't it, James? We could go start listing every single person.
Yeah, we couldn't. I think, you know, just go back to Neil on Saturday. You could just the pride was just bursting out of him. Yeah, at the end of the game when he was holding that cup up, you could just tell how much it meant to him, and it's just for us as fans, just really just fantastic for us to be able to there and thank him, you know, by chanting his name. But as you know, he said to Scott, it is one big team effort. You know, you Paul Aiken, who's the, you know, probably more the commercial, the more sort of front of house of it. But I think one thing that really brought it home to me, we always know it's about is it's one big club and one big team, etc. Is that picture I think they published when they were sort of just before they set off to Wembley, when the events at Craven Street, and I think Paul Sewell arranged for every single back member of the club to stand in front of Craven Street and took a picture and posted it on social media and said, "This is one club, this is one family." It was also great, on Wembley, all the players and all the squad were there. Like 𝗀𝗂𝗧𝗏, Zach Fishwick, PLT, they were all there, part of that celebration when they were getting the cup. And I think that's what brought this club forward a lot. Just that togetherness. It started in 2017 after we were after the relegation, and we sort of built it all up through the championship, and we just kept it on. And as I said, bringing in people like Paul Lakin, with his experience of the commercial, I think, reality of what he'd learnt in the Premier League with Stoke and Wolves. He's brought that professionalism into Rovers, and we're seeing it coming through in heaps and spades through how it's taken the club forward. Everything is like an opportunity to sort of for us to spend our money on the club, and by doing that, it enables them to go invest in players, invest in the academy, bringing in new players, etc., to keep the club going forward and to sort of to even better things. And it's just like it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, right. I'm going to bring Steve again because right. At no point did I think this Robin pod would go on as long as what it is. At this moment in time, it's 1 hour and 51 minutes, and we haven't even talked about the Catalan game yet. So Steve has been waiting patiently to do Robin's Revisited. So here we go. Steve, massive apologies. Although I do know you like listening to us, so it's not exactly total punishment. But Steve, obviously we've had a lot to talk about. What have you got for us in Robin's Revisited this week?
Well, because we're playing Catalans, I'm going to go back to a game against the Catalans, one of the more entertaining games we played. And we actually played it, it's 12 years ago. We played them in Toulouse. There was a 12,000 crowd, and it was a remarkable game, especially for one Rovers player in Greg Eden. It was a game that swung either way, and Rovers were into a quick 12-0 lead before Catalan hit back. And in fact, it was Catalan that went in front 13-12 at half time. But Rovers, it was a commanding lead. The lads will remember this when Thomas Bosk put a kick in. It was fumbled by Dobson over the line, and many people thought Dobson had knocked on. But Eden picked the ball up and went the length of the field to touchdown. And Dobson added the extras before yet another Eden break gave Rovers another good attacking position. Dobson attacked the line, managed to step and dummy his way to within 5 metres, drew fullback 𝗀𝗃𝗃, and he offloaded inside to Hodgson, who scored under the post. So it was 12-0 to Rovers. But this was a hell of a Catalan team. As well as Thomas Bosk, they had people like Leon Price, Daryl Millard, Pierre, Lapini Pierre, Mickey Pierre's brother, and Steve Menzies. So that's a hell of a lineup for Catalans. And they came back, especially from some, I guess it's called inspirational play from Remy Casti, the captain. He took the Rovers line on before offloading to another ex-Robin in Kevin Leroya, who powered his way over to narrow the lead although Bosch missed the conversion attempt. But Catalan were on a roll, and next set, 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗏 tried his load for obstruction, but the momentum was going, and he did score soon after, again, Bosch missing the conversion. So, yeah, that was it, 13-12 at half-time. And the odd point came with a drop goal that Bosch put over about 5 seconds before the halter. After the break, both sides attacked and looked to press home an advantage, but the final pass went to ground, or the opposition got the ball. Bosch added a penalty to extend Catalan's lead just before the hour mark, but with 13 minutes remaining, Eden scored his second try of the night, latching onto Dobson's pass to touchdown close to the left touchline, and Rovers retook the lead. Dobson missed that conversion, and it looked vital that he missed it, but the Dragons went back in front when 𝗲𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏 barged over for his second of the night. Bosch added the conversion. The Dragons had a 5-point lead, but with 5 minutes remaining, Greg Eden latched onto Sean Gleeson's short pass to cross, give himself a hat-trick, and give Dobson a tough touchline conversion to give Rovers a win. And Dobson duly converted. So Rovers won by that 1 point, but it was a match that went in, I guess, one of Greg Eden's best. Great hat-trick and a great performance by Rovers against a very, very good Catalans team.
Steve, you just stay there. Just wait for this exit to play out, and just stay there. Steve, it'd be remiss of me not to speak to you about the Challenge Cup final victory. Just tell me, someone who's followed the club for so long, been so heavily invested, so knowledgeable about what's gone before, been, had so many experiences. Just what does it mean to you to see the Robins lift the Challenge Cup trophy?
Neil Udgell mentioned those that have passed, including people like Phil Law, Roger, Colin Hutton, lots of other people. Well, I come nearer to home with my family because in between, it was 45 years, but my father, who led me to follow the Robins, my mum was a black and white till she met my father, and then she saw the error of her ways. But not only that, but my own daughter died 7 years ago, and she absolutely adored Rovers. So I thought of those people. But when Minchella picked the trophy up and held the trophy up, there was a few tears in the eyes, and I just said, we've won the cup, and if you remember last week when we previewed it, I said if Rovers were within 4 points, 20 minutes from the end, we'd win the cup. Well, we did it with 2 minutes to spare, and it proves how fit we were. I thought defensively we were brilliant, absolutely superb defensively. You've already alluded to Mikey and his defence. I thought he was brilliant in defence, but the whole squad were. And I just feel proud to be a red and white, And it's one that will keep a smile on my face for a long time. And I think we can get better. I think the league leaders' trophies within our grasp. We're already 6 points ahead of the third place club. Obviously, we'd have Wigan to beat, but it's not beyond us. And so it might be the precursor to a lot more success. And other people, when I've gone, will enjoy it just as much as me, hopefully.
Yeah, well, Steve, get your head back in the history book because I'll be bringing you on before the Castleford game next week for another Robins Revisited. But Steve, thank you for joining us again, and sorry for keeping you waiting for so long. It's not as if we've had not that much to talk about, though, is it?
No, no. And I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, lads.
Cheers, Steve. You take care, pal.
Cheers, mate.
Right, guys, that brings us to... And bloody hell, I didn't realise you had so many questions, so it's my fault for not looking before we came on air to do this. So we've got lots of questions for question time. Let's go through them one by one, because I'm sure you've got lots of answers. Before we even talk about playing Catalan on Saturday. So the first question is from Matt Gregson. Peters has stated 𝗲𝗏 is playing Friday, even with 𝗂𝗽𝗆 injured. Who drops out? Likely rested for him. Still basking in the glory. Of course, we've seen the squad announced early today, didn't we, Graham? A number of changes. The fact that 𝗂𝗽𝗆 shouldn't have been playing in the first place means that there will be some changes. And then he follows up with, and an interesting point that I've seen made is that many are saying, why would it, blah, blah, is that soccer about the final? I'll tell you what, let's talk about Catalan, Graham. There's a number of changes to the squad, isn't there? 𝗲𝗏's playing, isn't he? He's playing.
Yeah, and I think he'll be used as he's been used before. I think he'll come on when the time is right to do so. I think we've seen some good promise from him so far. Still raw, still a bit of work to be done, but the more exposure he can get at Super League level, the better he will get. And yeah, I think he's an exciting prospect. And whatever happens with 𝗂𝗽𝗆 on the next few weeks, 𝗲𝗏 I think was already penciled in regardless for Friday evening.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, James, we're going to go back to the Challenge Cup final. Bob Benstead, Humber pilot. He's done a great job of sailing some of them ships into the Humber on the back of the Robins Challenge Cup victory and his emotions. How did we find the energy and mental capacity to get down the other end of the field after that Sneed 2040 in the 73rd minute? Not enough has been made of it. We just keep getting back up off the canvas. I'm sure when the dust settles, we'll start talking about these moments. I think we talked about earlier about that specific moment, didn't we? It was that is what they're trained for, isn't it? That's the Robins. This is the Robins.
It was, and I think go back to what we were saying earlier about in terms of it's a whole team effort. I think we've got to give massive credit to the fitness team at the club, because that last 10 minutes was not possible without them. Obviously the players take responsibility for nutrition and everything, but for those guys to get them as fit as they have. And we've seen it throughout the whole season that that last 10 minutes was purely down to them, and it was unbelievable. It was said, didn't we, that a few years ago a Rovers team would have folded under all that pressure, but this one didn't. They made a totally different stuff, and like I say, big raps to the coaching staff and the physios who get in the fitness guys who get them ready and be able to put in that sort of performance.
Dawn Kirby, it's great to follow the Robin pod. She asks, do you think any of our forwards, Scott, will be rested this week, given the amount of work they had to do at Wembley? If you look at the Catalan, the squad for Catalan, it's not wholesale changes, isn't it? It's pretty much everyone from Gerard Hargreaves, McAloran missing, but
Bill Leyland comes in for Mickey Mack, 𝗲𝗏 comes in for 𝗂𝗽𝗆, Booth comes in for Burgess. There won't be a lot of changes. It does allow 𝗀𝗽𝗆𝗏 to drop back into prop, I think, which I think he'll do. He'll cover 𝗂𝗽𝗆𝗏. 𝗲𝗏 will come off the bench as and when required. Probably have a couple of stints like he normally does. Hopefully he brings a bit of energy like he normally does as well. And let's hope he puts a few Catalan players on the backsides like he did Jose Delaney the other week as well. You know, because when he comes on, he certainly comes on with a lot of energy, doesn't he? If we can just eradicate them couple of like errors that he did against St Helens, the 2 or 3 drop balls in the second half that he did. But there's a player in Doro as well. But there won't be massive changes. You know, what Willie does with Rovers' team is that he names his team, but then we've got so many players that can play in so many positions. Dino will play a bit of prop, he'll play a bit of second row, he'll probably play a bit of a forward. You know, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 will probably drop into the pack, into the front row, then he'll probably go into the second row as well in regards to substitutions. But there won't be many changes. It's ultimately Doro for JWH, Bill Leyland for Mickey Mack, and Booth will come in on the wing for me for Budgie. That'll be the only changes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few questions about the Challenge Cup final in particular. This one, Graham, as good as Warrington were, Sneyd in particular, would anyone agree that there was a surprise? It was a surprise with a bit of game mismanagement in not taking a drop goal in the last 10 minutes. I think that was Sneyd. Do you know what? There was a point, wasn't there, where Sneyd set up. It looked like he was going to drop. Do you know what? I don't know why he didn't go for it. And he went for like a little drop kick. And he thought that was a moment. But you know what? So what?
And that was probably his worst kick of the game as well.
Yeah.
Because it fell straight into, I think it fell straight into Toby King's arms. And then Petter battered him to the floor. And it was the 6th tackle of the set. And we got the ball back.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Graham, just you answer this one. We've probably already talked about it. I just want to comment, this is from the Spirit of League. Just want to comment on how under the radar Mickey's last kick has gone. Very difficult kick. Absolutely nailed it. Well done, Mikey. The slight caveat, I will say, Graham, it wanted on the touchline, was it?
It wasn't that far in either. It wasn't, so it wasn't on the touchline. It was only about 8-9 metres in from the touch. Yeah,
but the magnitude of it, the gravitas of it, that's what. It's
certainly not a gimme in front of it, put it that way. And you put yourself in that scenario, go out to the local park and put the ball down and get one in front of the sticks in a similar position. So, right, you've got one kick to win the Challenge Cup. Go ahead and do it, and put yourself in that position. See how many people can knock one over from that far out.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's a few of these questions, like pretty much the similar theme. But Peter Barley, I want to answer this one because he's put, what an emotional weekend it's been. All we've been talking about since Saturday. Disregard the weather and paying £10.20 for a pint in a hotel. £10.20. Scott, do you think there's going to? Well, I'll tell you what. Do you think there's going to be a bit of a hangover this week? Well, not at £10.20 a pint though. It cost me about £200. But are we going to push on this week and maybe rest of it? I don't know. The big question is, it's like the old after Lord Mayor's parade, isn't it? You don't know, do you, Scott, what's going to happen the next game?
And it's always tough to back up after Wembley. A lot of teams struggle for the first week after Wembley. Look, we know the players have had a bit of freedom since winning the cup. They've probably sank more beers than they should have done. They've probably eaten more crap food than they should have done. I know they didn't go back into training until today, so they've only got a 2-day prep for Friday, which is a bit of a.
𝘀𝗂𝗃𝗁𝗃 teetotal.
Yeah. I thought they were going back into training yesterday, but apparently not. They went back in today, and then they've obviously got captain's run tomorrow. So there's not a lot of prep, I don't think, being done for Friday night. But let's just hope we can get through on adrenaline alone. And I think us fans, we've got to do a job as well on Friday night. We've got to. If the going gets tough, we've got to drag the lads through on Friday night as well. You just give them the adrenaline rush and get behind them, and it'll be. Look, I know Catalan haven't scored for the last 3 games that they've played, but for me, when you look through their squad list, they're a better team than that. They should be, But I'm glad we're at home. I think at home gives us a better advantage than, say, if we had to travel away to anywhere on Friday night. Wherever, if we'd have been away from home after a cup final, wherever you're playing, I think it's a tough ask. But the fact we're at home and the fact we've got our sellout crowd behind us, if we can do our job and drag the lads through, whether you win by a point or whether you win by 10 points or 20 points, just win the game. That'll do us this week.
Yeah, I tell you what, James, we're not going to preview the Catalan game, but if you look at the squad the Catalan have announced, it's the strongest, pretty much, Catalan squad they've had out all season. They've had a week off. They've been in a training camp to try and get them into some kind of shape. So it is potentially a very tough encounter, James.
Yeah, it is. I think. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is probably the fact that they've had a week off, and sort of Rovers, as Scott alluded to, have had quite a few beers, justified and thoroughly deserved, etc. So, I'm expecting a tough game on Friday night. It's not going to be the gimme that might have been a few weeks ago. No, it's going to be a tough game. But then you look at the Rovers squad, and if they play, again, to their potential, they should win. There aren't going to be the change we're going to make. I think obviously they'll have some sort of impact, but you still look at the squad, you're thinking that's a pretty good squad overall, and I think there's a lot of teams that would like to have that sort of in-depth squad depth that we've got now.
Yeah, Graham. This Robin pod's got. Apologies for people who are getting a bit bored now, but this Robin pod's going on forever, and we've got more questions, Graham. So I'm sure you'll be happy to answer these. Willie said in his pre-match presser that he will have some news on Tyrone May shortly. I think that's him on his way, and all rumours seem to have died off. Of course, his brother has just now signed on a trial basis with the West Tigers, where his other brother, Terrell May, is also already operating. The stars seem to be aligning in terms of that move, don't they? Because Tyrone May, I think all the May brothers have always said that they just want to play with each. No, they don't want to play with each other. That's not the right sentence. They want to play rugby league with each other. Ultimately, Rovers don't need to be waiting for Tyrone May, although it'll be a massive loss, Graham, because if you look at that Challenge Cup performance, I think 28 tackles, he made more tackles combined than Mark Sneed and George William did, for example. He's I'm not saying he's irreplaceable, but he's very hard to replace in terms of what he does for the team.
He is, yeah, and that often goes in May's performances, the defensive work he puts in, and although he's not sort of vocal in terms of externally, when he's talking to the playing group, he's very, very vocal. So again, he's doing a lot of organising, pulling strings, etc. So I think his importance to the team can't be underrated there. And people have been critical of him not providing enough in attack and that, but for me, it's all round game of defence, organisation, and the chances he creates and getting his hand on the ball. He is a vital cog in that machine that we've got going on. So he's going to be, if he does go, he's going to be a big loss. But if he is going to go, then I think we need to know early enough so that we can get in motion down already around lining up some sort of replacement.
Yeah, definitely. I tell you what, Bazza Kingston, he's. Do you know what? I've read this question back, and it's really interesting because I've got a couple of different answers. Scott, I'll go to you. It says, was the emotional Saturday the best emotion you've experienced, not only with our club but in sport in general? For me, I still get tears in my eyes now seeing clips of the full-time hooter and what it means to me as a fan. It's quite emotive, isn't it? Because I think Graham said, everyone's got their own personal. It's personal to each person, isn't it? It's like, do you know what I mean? It's very hard to, I don't know, generalize it.
Everybody's different. I mean, going back the 45 years, 1980, I was only 6-year-old, so I don't really remember much about Rovers beat. I was at the game. I remember going to the match, but I don't remember anything about it, and I don't remember any of the emotions. I guess when you've had 45 years, and 40 years of not winning a major trophy, when one comes along, I think we might have been forgotten how to be euphoric. Some people, I don't know. We don't know. If you're a Wigan and you win trophies every season, I don't know. Does it get monotonous? Does it get boring? I don't know. If we won the grand final and we won the Challenge Cup again next year, would it have the same effect on people? It's that first one for 40, 45 years. I don't know. As I think, as James alluded to earlier, and I think Graham mentioned it as well, there's nothing like sport, is there, that gives you and you said it, Jono, there's nothing like sport that gives you that raw emotion of when your team gets over a line. I can't really think of any other situations in life where you get that raw emotion of, and it was the way it happened as well. The last 2 minutes, it wasn't as if you ran away with a game and you won 30-40-0. It was the way it was done as well. So I think on how you win depends on how your emotions are as well. Some of the pictures that you see on the television cameras of the fans in the crowd, people are crying, people are rolling their heads, people are. You said it affects everybody differently, but I don't think there's there's nothing like sport to make your emotions just explode. And until you feel the love of a club, regardless of what sport that is, whether it's rugby, football, cricket, basketball, whatever, until you've got that passion of the love of a club that is actually the beating heart, a very big part of the beating heart of you, only sport can bring you that feeling. I think it's euphoric. It really is.
Yeah, Mike Duran, he says, exactly how the hell do we win that? Well, we won it because we just hung on and kept going. James McCracken. James, you answer this one. Do we go on and win the treble?
Why not? We're the only team that can do it this year. We're in a good position. Keep doing what we're doing, and then why not?
Yeah, Graham, a great question for you, and this is from Gary, who's been on the Robin pod. Where would you start your Saturday night out back in the day? Dram shop, cheese, or somewhere in Old Town?
None of those. Mine always used to start in Crown on a Saturday night, and then we used to get the bus into town. But after we'd got into town, it was always on the road. It was down Pepe's.
There you go. What about you, Scott? I mean,
yeah, very similar. I was always a Crown lad. Olness Road, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, usually when I was a lad.
I want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
yeah. I was doing other things then, but no, I always remember some of the great times watching Rovers. And we'll talk about Rovers' journey. I mean, I remember going to away games on a Sunday afternoon in the lower leagues, going to places like Chorley and Lancashire Lynx and Carlisle and Barrow and places like that, and coming home on the coach and getting dropped off in town. And we'd go to, places like, remember Checkers that was there? There was Checkers and there was White Hart and, doing like the old town pub crawl on a Sunday night. And there's many a time, as a younger fella, God, how I got off of work on a Monday, I have no idea. But you always know that when you get to work on a Monday that the day's only going to get better, don't you? It's not going to get any worse. But following Rovers has got me in some states over the years, believe me, especially on the old Sunday afternoon matches. So,
well, I'll tell you what, do you know what? The craziness this is, how crazy Rugby League is, because Rovers have just beat Catalan, bloody hell. I'm reading something. It's trying to do about 5 things at once. Rovers just beat Warrington in Challenge Cup final, and straight away we're already looking ahead to Catalan on Friday night. The games are thick and fast. I tell you what, if you go into the game, it's amazing, James, that they've announced that it's sold out. It's going to be the most home fans that I think have ever watched a game at Craven Park. Obviously, it's a homecoming. We're going to get the chance to celebrate the Robins lifting the Challenge Cup. It's interesting, Willie Peters, he's trying to keep a bit of a lid on the celebrations. He only wants to do certain things if we win. So there's a great onus on the players there, isn't there, to go and deliver for the supporters. But it is going to be a celebration, isn't it, James?
Oh,
on
yeah.
Friday,
Yeah, we were saying on the coach back on Saturday, it's just going to be absolutely just fantastic on Friday night. You know, got the Sky cameras there, so they're going to sort of see it all and witness it all and go on about it, you know, quite rightly. But no, it's going to be a fantastic night, regardless of what happens. I think, you know, even if, you know, yeah, it is. It's going to be such a fantastic night. Looking forward to it.
And Scott, I tell you what, if we analyse it properly, it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? Because Catalan they've got a point. They've been on the back of some bad results this season. They want to kickstart their season. They've had a break because of the Challenge Cup final. They've been in a camp. They've got players back fit. It's going to be a tough game on Friday night.
Yeah, really tough in regards just the situation we found ourselves in as well around the euphoria of a cup final. You know, they've had a week off, they've been in camp. It looks like Catalan have got a virtually full squad out. Tompkins is back in there as well, so he'll be reffing the game. It's a case of it's a tough one. As I said a few minutes ago, the fact we're at home, I think, helps us. If we were away to any team, it'd be a struggle this Friday night. But the fact we're at home, it's a tough one. It really is. Can we back up? Hey, we didn't think we'd, you know, everybody said a week before Wembley, we know we struggle against St Helens, we took them to the cleaners. You know, Rovers have this mentality now that we just turn up, we just do our job. We do our job. We don't let the opposition worry about them. But it will be a tough game. We're going to have to get over the top of them. They might have a bit more legs in them than they would expect. But we also have to remember as well that, as I said before, Catalan haven't scored a point in 3 games either. And for the players that they've got in their squad, that's not good enough. And I can see why they've been taken into camp as well. But they seem a bit of a car crash this year, Catalan, don't they? When you look through their squad list, you think to yourself, wow, there's some players in this team, but they're just not a team or don't seem to be. As I said, I'm going to go for a Rovers win. I think we'll beat them again. It'll be tight though. It won't be 34-4 or anything like that, I don't think. I'd take a 2, 4, 6 point win, put it to bed, move on to Castle next week, personally.
Yeah, and Graham, lastly, I've got a bit of a wry smile on my face. We used to worry whether we could back up after beating that lot on a Good Friday, go play someone on a Monday, Bank Holiday Monday. We're talking about backing up after a Challenge Cup victory and whether we can go again. We shouldn't worry, should we? This is a different beast. This Rovers team, we're a different animal now. That them days are gone where we're worried whether we can back up. You know, I think the greatest compliment is that they're a machine.
Yeah, I think the difference there is, John, that they've probably had about 48 hours in their legs, which they didn't have over the weekend.
Allegedly.
So yeah, I think that's the bit that's going to be interesting for me to watch is what are our effort areas like. The bits we get told every week in the press, our effort areas, those 1%ers that we've been talking about, the bits that we pride ourselves on, are they still there on Friday night? Have we let our standards drop? Have we got caught up in that moment of Saturday? Are we still thinking about that? Because Peters has been big on the most important game is the next game. So we've done that now. That's to bed. But today should have been a bit of a reset with that captain's run tomorrow. Looking forward to Friday. So yeah, I'll be interested to see all those unseen things that we don't ordinarily see, but the bit that we pride ourselves on, are we holding our own standards in the highest regard? And look, fatigue and emotional energy, we've invested a lot of that. I get that. But how do we perform? What's our performance like on the back of the week that we've just had?
Yeah, I tell you what. Then I said that was last. Very lastly, James, could this be our greatest victory this season? Then, based on that,
being Catalan,
yeah, based on what's just happened, the change around in the squad, the ability to turn it round after such a euphoric victory, and could this be actually the greatest? Well, not greater than beating but in terms of backing it up, because Rovers have always struggled to back up a victory, haven't they? Like a big victory to then go on to the next one. There's always been that struggle.
Yeah, if we get to the end of the season after round 28 and we've won the league leaders by 2 points, and we look back to this game and against Catalan we won it, we can say, yeah, that was the one that won it for us.
There you go. On that note, then, remember, if you go to the game on Friday, live, love, laugh, and be happy.
Singing a song when the red robin comes bobbing. When the red robin comes bobbing. When the red robin comes bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.